From Deloitte Tax, welcome to the Tax News and Views podcast. In this series, we talk to specialists from Deloitte about the latest business issues and developments. I'm Carrie Falkenhayn, your host for Tax News and Views. This podcast will explore how tax leaders can use AI, technology, and an effective operating model to strengthen compliance readiness and to modernize their tax function. In this conversation, I'm going to be joined by two of my Deloitte colleagues, Irene Puhala and John McKinney. Irene and John are going to discuss how organizations are responding to both changing legislation, including global developments such as Pillar 2, as well as the growing data complexity and increased scrutiny from tax authorities, how they're doing it through smarter processes, using connected technologies, and practical AI applications. They're also going to share some really relatable examples of how people, process, and technology can work together to save time, improve accuracy, and enhance readiness before looking ahead to the priorities shaping the next 12 or 18 months, something that I know is really important right now for tax leaders. So Irene, I'm going to start with you, and let's start with the big picture. What are some of the biggest challenges tax leaders are facing today when it comes to compliance readiness?
Harry, that's a great question. Tax leaders today are being asked to modernize even faster than before. They're having to navigate changing legislation, increased scrutiny from tax authorities, and global development such as Pillar 2. But at the same time, they're also managing growing data complexity. There's increased pressure to define what an AI-powered tax function should look like in practice. And so for many organizations, the question is no longer whether to transform, but where to actually even begin. So, an effective starting point may not be automation for its own sake. It typically starts with understanding the current process, including handoffs, friction points, and then data issues that create unnecessary effort. Then from there, tax leaders can identify the practical entry points for transformation. And then it's also important that tax aligns with the broader enterprise AI architecture and technology strategy. So that alignment really helps to confirm that the investments will support a connected, scalable future state rather than another siloed solution. So those are some of the significant challenges that tax directors have these days.
John, building on that, where do you typically see the biggest opportunities for process optimization in tax compliance?
Yeah, Carrie, there's a couple of opportunities that I'll go through. And I think a common one that maybe comes to mind first is closing that disconnect between the provision process and the compliance process. We've seen in a lot of organizations, maybe the calculations are getting completed during the provision process, but those aren't getting fully leveraged later when they're being redone for compliance. And so as a result, teams are often repeating that work a few months later. And so what happens here is this duplication really consumes time and can create surprises later on in the cycle where they're computing their return to provision adjustments that maybe could have been planned on earlier. I think another big opportunity is making better use of their existing tax technology. Oftentimes, organizations are investing in strong provision and compliance platforms, but really only using a fraction of their capabilities. And so instead of allowing those platforms, to do those complex calculations, improve workflows, and have stronger controls, the software is used too narrowly, when teams are maybe doing these calculations outside in Excel or doing some of these other analyses outside of the platforms. I think when teams really fully understand the available functionality in those platforms, they can really often improve, both quarterly and annual processes significantly without necessarily having to start anything from scratch. Finally, data management, I think, is another big opportunity. Oftentimes we see fragmented and duplicative data sources that can really make automation harder and limit an organization's ability to really scale automation and AI effectively. And so if you have a more connected data foundation that can give your tax teams a better platform for seeing analytics, other dashboards, and decision making. So really what we see there is process design is a huge opportunity, and that really matters because a lot of workflows that can remain heavily manual and spreadsheet driven really is where automation can fit in. So as maybe we're doing a process mapping or design exercise, this can really help teams see that full flow from beginning to end and help identify where those low value activities are that are still consuming a lot of time, that there is a possibility for automation or AI.
Irene, how can technology be an enabler for tax compliance, and where should tax leaders focus that investment? And maybe you could also add how Deloitte is helping clients address this challenge.
Technology is not only a significant enabler, but I would say is the most significant one. But it's really crucial that it's connected to a clear roadmap and that tax directors have a very realistic understanding of the current state. And so our approach with clients is very customized, and it's generally tailored to where a client is in their AI journey at the present time, and then looks forward into the future with respect to their specific circumstances. And so in some cases, we start with a broader tax AI transformation roadmap. And then in others, it may begin with kind of some targeted use cases that are focused on very, very specific process flows where we can get quick hits and create value fairly quickly. And so when we look at investments and where there's been a lot of success in technology investments, it usually focuses on a few key areas. One is the foundation of automation, especially where there are repetitive tasks that we're able to streamline. So then teams can spend more time on strategic work, similar to what John was saying. And we also find a lot of opportunity around data analytics, which really helps organizations to, identify the risks, trends, and planning considerations a lot more effectively, and really allows tax directors to see things at a higher level. And that's been very powerful. We also see a lot of value in moving away, again, from the disconnected spreadsheets towards a much more integrated system and cloud-based solution upon which AI and agents can be applied to really improve accessibility, streamline things, and really optimize the workflows. So what we're doing is helping clients to build capabilities and not just simply implement one-off solutions. And our approach includes workshops where we map the current state and then identify a full portfolio of, optimization opportunities, which can include AI agent use cases, and then work with the client to prioritize those opportunities into a phased roadmap so that they know what is a have to have and what is a nice to have. And then what that leads to is a full AI-enabled process and technology roadmap that can really help leaders to focus on the priorities that matter the most and ensure that the sequencing and timing of the investment coincides and is aligned with both the near-term impacts as well as long-term change.
John, beyond technology, what are the hallmarks of a truly effective tax compliance operating model?
Yeah, and on top of some of the things that maybe Irene just mentioned, I think what we've seen, an effective tax operating model really combines an effective technology foundation, having a collaborative teaming approach, and then really a strong understanding of your full end-to-end process. So when those elements all come together, the tax function can then move forward from being viewed maybe primarily as a processing center or as a cost center that we see sometimes to really becoming a more strategic advisor to the business. And I think that's where a lot of tax leaders really want themselves to be. So I think here, automation, AI really play an important role, but that should really be framed kind of as work reallocation, job aids rather than necessarily job replacement. I think when repetitive or low value activities are being reduced, then those tax teams and our clients are going to be able to gain more capacity for the analytics, planning, problem solving, and really forward looking attitude, I think, that we want to see tax departments to have. And so thinking about a shift like that is really where we're seeing a value from the tax department and that operating model begin to emerge. I think another big hallmark is, as we've said, just visibility into the whole process. Many organizations really haven't mapped out their full end-to-end workflow, which can really make it harder to improve going forward and really understanding kind of how everything fits together. But once that process is clearly understood, it often becomes easier, I think, to distinguish immediate improvement opportunities from maybe those longer-term items maybe on the roadmap. From there, you're able to build reliable data governance, strong internal controls, have continuous learning, and really close collaborations with the other functions like finance, legal, and accounting even. And that can become essential to really having that resilient compliance operating model.
Okay, so looking ahead, what should tax leaders be doing now to prepare for the next 12 to 18 months?
Thanks for that, Carrie. I think over the next 12 to 18 months, I think the message has come pretty clear through this discussion. It's really around focusing on assessing their current operating model with the amount of legislative change, the global tax developments, as well as technology and AI moving so quickly. It's really crucial for tax directors to be focused on assessing their operating model to make sure that they have the optimal talent mix and technology environment that's aligned with the future. The future is very uncertain. We don't know what it's going to look like, but what we can do is help tax directors to plan, to be nimble enough and plan for that. And so now's the time, right, to invest in your talent development and then continuously reviewing and optimizing processes and then making very thoughtful technology decisions that are future facing and being very deliberate in the next 12 to 18 months to have a very clear view of what the plan is.
Well, thank you both, Irene and John. Really appreciate your insights. Lots for our listeners to think about. If our listeners would want more, I'd encourage you to go to Deloitte.com and just search on technology. There's a variety of articles there for you to look at. As always, you can connect with Irene or with John via LinkedIn directly. And I hope you'll continue to tune in here for our next episode. Until then, everyone, be well. Take care.